The 1990s were a golden era for motorcycles, raw power, groundbreaking designs, and bikes that pushed the limits of speed and style. What if I told you that some of the most legendary rides of the decade had one tiny flaw that kept them from absolute perfection? From superbikes that ruled the track to iconic street beasts, here are the 10 almost perfect superbikes from the 90s. If the 90s had a motorcycle that screamed, "I'm the king of speed," it was the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-11. When it hit the streets in 1990, it wasn't just fast, it was the fastest production motorcycle in the world, topping out at an insane 176 miles per hour. That's right, before the Hayabusa or modern superbikes, the ZX-11 was the bike to beat. Powering this speed demon was a 1052cc inline-4 engine that cranked out 145 horsepower, a serious number for its time. But what really made the ZX-11 special was its ram air intake system, which helped squeeze out even more speed at higher velocities. This was cutting-edge technology back then, and Kawasaki was the first to introduce it on a street bike. The ZX-11 was fast, but let's be real, it was more of a land missile than a proper sport bike. Heavy, long, and built for straight-line speed, this thing handled like a school bus in the corners. Now, you might think that something this fast would be a twitchy, uncomfortable ride, but nope. The ZX-11 was surprisingly comfortable, making it a favorite for long-distance sport touring as well. It had a plush seat, a large fairing for wind protection, and smooth power delivery. This was the bike for riders who wanted to hit ridiculous speeds without feeling like they were getting beaten up by the wind. But as the 90s progressed, Kawasaki had to defend its crown. That's when Honda stepped up with a bike that would forever change the superbike scene, the Fireblade. If the ZX-11 was about brute speed, the Honda CBR 900RR Fireblade was about precision, agility, and a complete rethinking of sport bike design. Introduced in 1992, this bike didn't just enter the leader bike segment, it redefined it. Here's the genius. Honda could have just made another heavyweight 1000cc superbike, but instead, they went the lightweight route. The Fireblade's 893cc engine was slightly smaller than its competitors, but what it lacked in displacement, it more than made up for in handling. It weighed just 408 pounds, a full 80 pounds lighter than most of its rivals. That's a massive difference. The result? Razor-sharp handling, insane power-to-weight ratio, and a bike that felt like an extension of the rider. It could outmaneuver and out-accelerate bigger bikes on twisty roads and racetracks. This was the birth of the total control philosophy that still defines Honda's sports bikes today. The Fireblade may not have revolutionized sports bikes, but let's not pretend it was perfect. The frame was notorious for being too flexy, and plenty of riders found out the hard way that it could get twitchy at high speeds. The Fireblade wasn't just good on paper, it dominated real-world riding. Racers, canyon riders, and street hooligans alike loved it for how effortlessly it flicked into corners. This was the first superbike that proved power wasn't everything. Agility mattered just as much. But while Honda was focused on agility, Ducati was cooking up something in Italy that would change sport bike design forever: the breathtaking 916. If motorcycles had an art museum, the Ducati 916 would be the centerpiece. Even today, this bike is considered one of the most beautiful motorcycles ever made, but don't be fooled by its good looks. The 916 wasn't just a pretty face, it was a full-fledged superbike racing weapon. Designed by the legendary Massimo Tamburini, the 916 debuted in 1994 and instantly set new standards for both aesthetics and performance. Its underseat exhaust, single-sided swing arm, and sharp, aggressive fairings made it look like nothing else on the road. But Ducati wasn't just chasing style. This design actually improved aerodynamics and handling, making the bike even faster on the track. Speaking of speed, the 916cc V-twin engine packed a serious punch. Producing around 114 horsepower, it might not sound earth-shattering today, but in the mid-90s, this thing was a beast, especially because of its torque-heavy power delivery. And Ducati wasn't playing around. This bike wasn't just for show. It dominated world superbike racing, winning 4 championships between 1994 and 1999. That's how you know a bike is truly legendary, when it performs just as good as it looks. The 916 is beautiful, but calling it the greatest sport bike ever is pure Ducati fanboy nonsense. It was unreliable, expensive to maintain, and let's be honest, plenty of Japanese bikes in the 90s could spank it on the road. But while Ducati was focusing on bringing Italian finesse to racing, Yamaha had their own plan to create a bike that would completely shake up the leader bike class. Enter the YZF-R1. By the late 1990s, the superbike world was changing. Honda had revolutionized sport bikes with the CBR 900RR, and manufacturers were racing to catch up. Then, in 1998, Yamaha dropped the bombshell, the YZF-R1. This wasn't just another leader bike, it was a complete reimagining of how sport bikes should be built. The secret? Compact design plus raw power. Yamaha managed to shrink the R1's chassis to be almost as small as a 600cc bike, while packing a 998cc engine producing 150 horsepower. The result? A bike that felt like a missile with handlebars. One of its biggest innovations was the stacked gearbox, which let Yamaha build a shorter, more agile frame without sacrificing power. This made the R1 handle like a dream while still being blisteringly fast. It felt like a 600, but hit like a heavyweight. The original R1 was a game changer, but it also scared the hell out of people. Yamaha focused so much on power and weight reduction that it felt borderline unstable at times, more like a ticking time bomb than a refined superbike. When R1 hit the streets, it blew away the competition. Riders loved its aggressive styling, sharp handling, and brutal acceleration. It instantly became a favorite for both racers and adrenaline junkies. But just as Yamaha was rewriting the rules for leader bikes, Suzuki had a plan of their own, bringing back their legendary GSX-R750 with a high-tech twist. While Yamaha was revolutionizing leader bikes, Suzuki had their own trick up their sleeve, a bike that balanced power, weight, and handling in a way that no one else had done before. Enter the 1996 Suzuki GSX-R750, a machine that redefined the 750cc class and became the blueprint for modern superbikes. Suzuki had been making the GSX-R750 since the mid-80s, but by the mid-90s, it needed a major upgrade to stay competitive. Instead of just tweaking the old design, Suzuki completely rebuilt the GSX-R750 from the ground up, shaving off 44 pounds, improving aerodynamics, and packing it with a 128 horsepower inline-4 engine. The result? A bike that handled like a 600, but had the power of a leader bike, a perfect middle ground. One of its biggest innovations was the twin spar aluminum frame, which made the bike incredibly rigid yet lightweight. This gave riders the confidence to push harder in corners, making the GSX-R750 a track day favorite. It was also one of the first production bikes to feature ram air intake, boosting power at high speeds. The GSX-R750 was awesome in the 90s, but it was also Suzuki's biggest identity crisis. Too heavy to compete with the 600s, too weak to keep up with the leader bikes. Was there really a point? The 1996 GSX-R750 wasn't just a hit, it set the standard for Suzuki's entire sport bike lineup for the next 2 decades. Even today, riders talk about how perfectly balanced this machine was. But while Suzuki was fine-tuning balance, Honda was building a bike that would put pure speed above everything else, the Super Blackbird. When Honda introduced the CBR 1100XX Super Blackbird in 1996, they had one goal in mind: steal the title of world's fastest production bike from Kawasaki Ninja ZX-11. And guess what? They did just that. With a 1,137cc inline-4 engine, pumping out 164 horsepower, the Blackbird could hit a top speed of 178 miles per hour, making it the fastest bike in the world when it launched. The name Blackbird was even a nod to the legendary SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, known for being one of the fastest aircraft ever built. Honda was making a statement, but the Blackbird wasn't just about brutal speed. It was refined and smooth, making it an excellent sport touring bike. Unlike some high-speed machines that felt twitchy and uncomfortable, the CBR 1100XX had silky power delivery, great wind protection, and an ergonomic riding position that made it a dream for long rides. Honda built the Blackbird to be the fastest bike in the world, and then what? They got one-upped by the Hayabusa 3 years later, a fantastic sport tourer, but as a speed king, short-lived. This bike dominated the speed crown until 1999, when Suzuki came out with something even crazier, the Hayabusa. But before we get into that, let's talk about another legend that changed the game, Kawasaki's insane ZX-7R. While everyone was chasing top speed records, Kawasaki was focused on something else, building the best handling superbike of the decade. And that's exactly what they did with the 1996 Ninja ZX-7R. This was not a bike for beginners. The ZX-7R had one of the most aggressive riding positions ever, making it feel like a full-blown race bike for the street. The 748cc inline-4 engine produced 120 horsepower, but it wasn't just about power, it was about precision. What made the ZX-7R special was its race-inspired chassis, featuring an aluminum twin-spar frame and fully adjustable suspension. It was built to attack corners like no other bike in its class. Racers loved it, and Kawasaki's factory race team used it as the foundation for their world superbike machines. One cool feature? The dual air intake sticking out of the front fairing, which gave the bike an aggressive look and actually boosted performance at high speeds. The ZX-7R looked like a race bike, but let's not kid ourselves, it was a tank. Heavy, outdated, and only competitive because Kawasaki's race team made it work. Compared to the Fireblade or R1, this thing was a dinosaur. The ZX-7R became an icon among riders who wanted a bike that felt like a race machine straight out of the showroom. But while Kawasaki focused on handling, Suzuki was about to drop the biggest bomb of the 90s, the Hayabusa. By 1999, the world was ready for a new Speed King, and Suzuki delivered it with the GSX-R750 Hayabusa. This wasn't just a fast bike, it was the fastest production motorcycle ever built at the time, with a top speed of 194 miles per hour. The 1299cc inline-4 engine produced 173 horsepower, making it an absolute rocket. But what set the Hayabusa apart wasn't just raw speed, it was the way it handled high speeds. Unlike previous top speed bikes, the Hayabusa was shockingly stable, even when approaching 200 miles per hour. The secret? Aerodynamics. Suzuki designed the bike with a radical wind tunnel tested fairing that helped it cut through the air with minimal resistance. Some people thought it looked bulky, but every part of the design had a purpose, to go faster than anything else on the road. The Hayabusa was the fastest bike of its time, but come on, most owners just used it for straight line flexing. It's a drag bike with fairings, not a real sport bike. The Hayabusa's reign as the Speed King led to an industry-wide gentleman's agreement in the early 2000s to limit production bikes to 186 miles per hour. That's how much of a game-changer it was. But while Suzuki was winning the top speed war, Ducati was preparing to release a V-twin monster that would dominate the racetracks, the 996. The Ducati 996 wasn't just a follow-up to the legendary 916, it was an even better version of it. Launched in 1999, the 996 took everything that made the 916 amazing and turned it up to 11. Powering the 996 was a 996cc L-twin engine, pushing out 112 horsepower. But what really made this bike special was how it handled. It had perfect weight distribution, razor-sharp steering, and insane grip, making it one of the best cornering machines ever built. And in case you were wondering, yes, it absolutely dominated world superbike racing. Riders like Carl Fogarty and Troy Bayliss rode the 996 to multiple championship wins, cementing its place in motorcycle history. The 996's undersea exhaust, single-sided swing arm, and aggressive styling became an iconic look, copied by many but never truly replicated. Even today, Ducati fans consider it one of the most perfect superbikes ever made. The 996 was gorgeous, but good luck riding one daily. Overheating, electrical issues, and a price tag that make Japanese superbikes look like bargain deals. If you weren't a hardcore Ducati fan, this thing was a nightmare. But as the 90s ended and the 2000s began, one final bike would take sport bike performance to another level: the Honda RC51. Technically, the Honda RC51 came out in 2000, but it was developed in the late 90s, so it deserves a spot on this list. This was Honda's answer to Ducati's V-twin dominance in world superbike racing. Instead of sticking with inline-4 engines, Honda built a 999cc V-twin that produced 136 horsepower and had an insane torque curve. The RC51 wasn't just a race bike, It won championships, including the 2000 and 2002 WSBK titles. Honda went all in on the V-twin to beat Ducati, and yeah, it worked. But the RC51 was a heavy, unpowered brick compared to the leader bikes that followed. Cool history, but definitely overrated. It also became a favorite among track riders because of its bulletproof reliability. Even today, the RC51 is considered one of Honda's greatest sport bikes ever. So yeah, that's a wrap for these 10 amazing bikes, and comment down below which one was your favorite as well. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.